Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. For women like me, the Council's stated commitment to refreshing its strategy on preventing and tackling violence against women and girls is welcome. For those of us who have experienced sexual violence and live with the trauma of it, single-sex counselling services are crucial. In learning the lessons from the recent Edinburgh rape crisis debacle, I'm sure all of you will agree with me that any publicly funded service here in our city must necessarily place the needs of survivors as paramount. In Edinburgh, we know that female survivors desperate for single-sex services were labelled bigots, and their pleas were stored in a folder marked with the words hate emails. In our city, female survivors of sexual violence like me have already experienced a devastating breach of trust at the hands of our male attackers. But when we turn to council-funded services, only to be told that no single-sex service will be offered, our trust is betrayed all over again. This is unforgivable. When rape survivors are being denied services simply because they need to know men will not be present, something has gone very wrong in this city. It means women in need of female-only services are now self-excluding from these services. Stranded on the Survivors Network waiting list for over 2 years, I became desperate. I approached Brighton Women's Centre and spoke to a coordinator. I was told that the Women's Centre would not be able to guarantee a women-only service, and a man identifying as a woman could be present or allocated as a counsellor. This came as a shock to me because I previously noted that the Centre had advertised roles referencing Schedule 9, Part 1 of the Equality Act, which states that the posts are restricted to women only as a genuine occupational requirement. With the definition of a woman so brazenly eroded by these two council-supported services, can we all agree that this is a woeful state of affairs? How many other women are self-excluding from vital services in health and wellbeing services due to this obvious, blatant dilution of women's safe spaces? No woman who has been sexually assaulted by a man should be put into the position of having to accept a man, however he identifies, in a support or therapeutic environment. The major issue here is that women do not even have the right to know in advance, or in the current climate, be able to make a complaint without being vilified. Given the council is funding these services, I trust that Cabinet will ensure that its violence against women and girls strategy will take on board and remedy this anti-women policy. How many more women are silently struggling due to denial of our sex-based rights and access to single-sex services? Women like me were pleased to see that your full document listed one of the 4 objectives as, I quote, supporting survivors to ensure anyone affected by violence against women and girls has access to high-quality trauma-informed support. Curiously, the document only uses clear terminology for female and male as a biological category a few times. I'm glad the strategy recognises that sexual violence predominantly and disproportionately impacts women and girls, i.e. the biological category of female. However, female is only mentioned in regards to the police data twice, and while it's true that the document makes a distinction between females and all genders in the summary, it therefore blurs these categories. In describing violence against women and girls, the VOG strategy document states, and I quote, that this can happen to anyone regardless of age, ethnicity, religion, gender, ability or disability or sexual orientation, unquote. The Council's admission of the biological category of sex and the conflation of female with gender seems rooted in a desire to avoid offence to men who identify as women over the needs of female survivors. For women like me, the laudable strategy objective of supporting survivors with access to high-quality trauma-informed support not only rings hollow, but the vital role of single-sex services is completely ignored. As a resident to our city recently wrote, and I quote, if this council takes its commitment to tackling violence against women and girls seriously, a new approach is desperately needed, which reflects the differing opinions in the city and actively listens to survivors rather than silencing them, enabling solutions that don't leave survivors of male violence with nowhere to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. I'm going to ask Councillor